Art India panel discussion. We are going to look at, address, and hold forth on art in the time of the pandemic. You know, as we find ourselves in real life and in the life of our minds, in the middle of all these continuous dislocations, of body, mind, spirit that the corona pandemic has engendered, I'm actually reminded of this extraordinary poem by W.B. Yeats, Irish poet who wrote in English. It's called The Second Coming, and it is I'm sure it's known to many of us quite intimately. What's interesting about this poem is that Yeats wrote it in 1919, and immediately after the First World War ended, but also as the flu pandemic was raging in Europe from 1918 to 1920. And it's got these extraordinary lines, the center cannot hold, which have become like phrases and idioms in everyday life. There's also this extraordinary line, the ceremony of innocence is drowned. And I'm going to quote from a few lines from this poem, and then maybe talk a little about how the poem talks to our situation. And I quote from the poem: "The darkness," says Yeats, "the darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come, round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born." Right? It's a terrifying vision of violent upheaval, things that have gone haywire, a world that has turned upside down, but also a picture of a universe that is waiting for this sphinx-like monster to assume form, to take shape and conquer the world by tearing it apart. The beast here might as well be a virus. Now, over the last 3 months, lives have been lost and ways of life have been ruptured. All around one sees these protracted lockdowns, panic in its various mercurial, shape-shifting avatars. People in desperate situations, fleeing, dying, taken advantage of, being lied to, but also being attended to, being served, being relieved. As we find ourselves in the middle of such a landscape of disruptions, interrupted, and dwelling in real, more real anxieties, we also find the indomitable spirit that human beings are known for. Women and men standing up not only for themselves, but most importantly for others. People coming together as a collective to battle against the odds. Now, in this context, how do we begin to gather our thoughts? How do we begin to think of art in this environment? How do we continue from where we have left off? What do we show as gallerists? What do we make as artists? And how do we write as writers? What do we collect as collectors? So these are the questions I hope we try and address in the course of this short panel discussion. We have 3 eminent people here. We have Ms.Sangita Jindal, the founder of Art India and chairperson of the JSW Foundation. We have one of India's most important philanthropists. She has contributed significantly to areas like heritage conservation, art, architecture, and the crafts. She's also my boss at Art India. We have Atul Dodiya, one of my favorite artists, and one of the finest artists anywhere, whose practice has developed from a long philosophical engagement with history, art historical, cinematic figures. And one of his modus operandi is he successfully orchestrates conversations between contexts past and figures present, and vice versa. Shireen Gandhi, thank you for joining us. Shireen is one of the most important gallerists in South Asia, and her roster of artists at Gallery Chemould Prescott Road sounds like a who's who of Indian art. Thank you all for being here. I'm Abhay Sardesai and I edit Art India magazine. Now, if I was to reiterate the question I had adumbrated earlier, how do we gather the pieces strewn all around us? Um, you know, as an inspired art collector and as a sensitive corporate leader, Mrs. Jindal, how would you respond to the situation that we find ourselves in?
Abhay, I think this whole thing of this coronavirus pandemic, it was an invisible unknown. None of us ever knew that something like this is going to happen.
Right.
There was no planning, there was no foreboding. So I think this whole idea that how are we going to plan in the future? This lockdown has taught us many things.
True, true.
And we also realize that we are living in a country like India where a minuscule people have the wherewithal or the wealth or collectors. But you are surrounded by all our fellow Indians. And we are very ashamed to say that none of us really did not pay too much attention of the people who are around us. And we can see what is happening to all the migrant workers. And they are the people who are making us feel so, comforted. Without them, nothing works.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Whether it is in the factories, whether it is at our homes, whether it is in the work that we do, they are unknown faces.
Absolutely.
No. They are unknown faces, but we have treated them very badly.
True.
So I feel that the idea of humanity, and we people have all forgotten that. Some of us have, we have done something, but that is very little compared to the huge gravitas of the situation.
Right.
You had also asked that what will happen in the future. I actually don't know.
Sure.
I also know that the only thing that I have learned is that patience and perseverance is the key, with the hope that we will overcome.
Absolutely.
I feel that I will change my life. I don't think I can change, but I can try to change my life. Habit dies hard at times, and try to help in whatever way we can, whenever and however we can. The thoughts are already there. We are all of us have a conscience within us.
Sure. So Mrs. Jindal, do you feel that the level of interactivity between corporate houses and the art world will change for the better?
No, it will not change, because I feel that the art world is a manifestation of someone's mind. If I see Atul's paintings, the thought of Atul is written in his painting. He is the creator and he is the thinker, and we are interpreting it.
Sure.
So I think that whatever the artists are doing, they are a testimonial to this age. If I look at there are many photographers who are actually capturing the world. but I know that after 6 months or maybe a year or 2 years, those the photographers or those paintings will be the testimonials of the past. So
Right.
it is very important that the work of the artists
Right.
is extremely important. So when we have grandchildren, and when 20 years from now or 30 years from now, we will say that Atul Dodiya did this painting at the time of the pandemic.
Right. Right.
So there is going to be a give and take with the art world.
Sure. So I remember you once writing and talking about Krishan Khanna's Girl on a Swing. And I remember you talking about how that particular work of art actually spoke to you because it reflected a state that was, a girl who is in the throes of adolescence. And there was a certain exuberance that that work sort of enshrined. Um, in this moment of pain and panic, are there other works of art as a collector that speak to you, that alleviate your
I had
anxiety?
watched Kishan Khanna's work 25 years ago.
Right.
And whenever I see Krishan's work with the girl on the swing, the girl is moving, the girl is changing. And whenever I see that painting, I think that I will grow, I will move on to the world. The world has to become good. We will all make an effort. Will God can't do this to us. So so I know in that swing, one day we will overcome everything and we will move forward to the higher utopia. It is a fantasy that comes in my mind when I see these artworks.
Any other artwork that speaks to you in this moments of crisis?
I see Anju Dodiya's painting where it has some death in it. It is herself in the death, and I think that death and life are together.
Right, right, right.
So death is not a bad thing.
Sure, sure, sure.
Because one day we have to die, but let us die gracefully.
Right.
I don't feel sad about it.
No, sure, sure. Thanks a lot, Mrs. Jindal. Just to sort of take a cue from where Mrs. Jindal left us, death and life hand in hand, and death as life sort of sounds like this very, very meaningful collaboration, full of irony, of course, but full of what we understand as this very rare quality, which is truth. Shireen, talking about collaborations, you have been at the forefront of late of getting all these gallerists together, Experimenter and Espas and Nature Mort, Vadehra, to sort of create a kind of a joint platform for showcasing all the new artists and some of the older artists who doing exciting work. I remember this exhibition that you had hosted called In Touch. I think it's still on. Yes, it's an online exhibition, and I also remember Modus Operandi, which is again something that you have been doing for a long time, getting a host of young artists, newcomers, beginners, also older artists to show together in your wonderful space. One is also aware of what's happening in places like Los Angeles, with people like David Zwerner sort of collaborating with smaller galleries and creating a platform where people can show different kinds of art to a larger audience, and all of it sort of together without any kind of a hierarchy. Would you like to dwell on these moments, Shireen?
Yeah. So, I sent you a wonderful talk at Basel. Actually, Art Basel has been having wonderful panel discussions. And I think in the time that we are in,
Right.
it, as Mrs. Jindal says, we are all groping. We really don't know what the future is.
Bilkul.
I find that these kind of discussions where our colleagues, whether they're in Mexico, whether they're in Los Angeles or New York or Germany or Hong Kong, there's a wonderful sense of the unknown that all of us have.
Right.
I feel like, when we're in this sort of state of isolation, sitting here at alone with our own families and
Shireen, your audio is sort of not very clear, unfortunately.
okay, I'm just going to go a little closer. Is it better?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Sorry about that.
No.
I'm just saying, I wanted to say that, in this state of isolation, when we're so alone
Right.
with our very immediate family and very little else to clutch on to, it kind of becomes very heartening and important to know that all of us are in the same boat.
True.
So when I listen to my colleagues in different parts of the world, there's a sense of camaraderie without even knowing these people. I feel like so close to somebody I heard called Dominique Levy. Her sense of vulnerability, and I think at the moment what we feel is an extreme sense of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
I have artists who call me who are, some are strong, some are holding out, some are like, Atul will speak for himself, but there are some that are really, really falling apart. And it's quite hard, we need to be strong. We're like parents to our artists often. And I feel I'm not always able to play that role because I'm feeling equally vulnerable. Am I ready at this point in time at 12 noon when I'm feeling the way I am to speak to somebody who's much, much worse? So this kind of collaboration that we had with our colleagues in India, which wasn't just started by me, it's interesting because it really, conversations are seeds of, it's so wonderful when you can kind of have that conversations that, everyone else or Zoom conversations. And the seed began with actually David Warner having done this really very generous platform.
Yeah.
He has all the facilities in his gallery to host younger galleries. They didn't have the expense. So, the big man, big gallery brings in younger art galleries in order to, of course, quality is imperative in such a thing. So my colleagues, and I would say in some ways competitors, we share artists, but it's just really, colleagues become your best friends. And this has been a wonderful coming together. We already have a platform, Mumbai Gallery Weekend.
Yes.
We're already used to working in a collaborative way. But in touch really put us in touch with a wider audience. We brought in Dubai as well. It's been quite a wonderful experience working together. What the outcome of it is, that these things are not, online platforms are just beginning. So I'm not saying that we're seeing rapid results, but
Of course.
for me, I think the key at the moment, as is with so many of my colleagues around the world, is collaboration.
Bilkul.
Really collaborate.
Bilkul. But what is also very fascinating, Shireen, is the last show that you had, Dhruvi Acharya's, her playful take on this many-headed monster that the pandemic is. I believe it did rather well, didn't it? Many of her works were sold and she was splashed everywhere. It is a very heartening thing, really, in this day and age of the of all kinds of lockdowns, especially economic. Can we then say that this can we sort of stick our necks out and say that this augurs well for the art market? Would you like to dwell on this turn, Shireen?
Yeah. Dhruvi reacts to the moment. I don't know whether she always reacts to the moment, but certainly, her response to the pandemic was so immediate. The
Right.
sense of, she was feeling so helpless. Her son was, I mean, there were so many, it's well recorded in so many interviews, but the sort of sense of helplessness sometimes drives you to the studio. And I would love to, I'm dying to see what Atul is doing. So I would love to hear this from him in an open panel like this. But with Dhruvi, she sort of, it was like a noose that pulled her to the thing. And it started by drawing. It become almost illustrated to that moment.
Shireen, your audio is a little unclear. Yeah, it's
Okay.
sorry about this.
So with Dhruvi, it became a very immediate response, and as the momentum grew, and as a sort of challenge that she put herself into became more and more, something that she put herself became more. She decided that she took this on as a longer challenge, and and it started out putting the work out on Instagram, but what this translated was that those who look at Dhruvi's work, I know, we all put things on Instagram. We don't necessarily sell, The platform is something that, that gives us publicity, extraction. It's very, very important in today's time, but it's not translating into sale at any given time.
Bilkul.
Translated, and I want this. It was like they were feeling Dhruvi was drawing. It was illustrative of the moment. And so she decided to have this exhibition, and we supported her. And a large part of the money, what we decided was that we would just use different NGOs. And, I just said, I started suggesting Karwane Mohabbat or Gunj or, fishermen in Bombay. So anything that was close to our heart at that moment, and we've raised a really, really wonderful package. And every time we receive some money, she's sending it out. So it's been a very, very beautiful and heartening collaboration that we've done. The moment I get a very, very heartfelt message from an NGO, I'm like, Dhruvi, have we collected enough? Can we send it to this? So it's almost momentary, it's not like pre-planned that, okay, we'll give all of it to one. It's been kind of spread over several NGOs, and it felt very, I think for Dhruvi, it's been a very, very, she's really got a lot out of this drawing and then giving. So I think it's been a wonderful experience.
Right, but would you like to sort of look at this moment and maybe reflect a little in a manner slightly more sort of intense about the art market at the moment, especially because you have one of the largest galleries in the country, and over the last 2 or 3 years, the art market has not really been doing as famously, as wonderfully as.
I would say that the last 2 or 3 years, in fact, Abhay, the art market picked up.
I see.
I think that 2008 we had a big beating, and
yes,
the last 3 years,
as compared to 2008, yes.
But last 3 years after that whole sort of downturn, there was a 100% pickup. Whether it was an art fair or whether exhibitions, the art market was not 2007, 2004 to 2000.
Yeah.
Definite shift.
Of course.
Unfortunately, this has happened, and we now have to see how we're going to handle the market as of today. I have, I'm doing a series of Instagram posts at the moment, and that Instagram post leads me to talking to my collectors. Some of them are not alive, so I speak to their spouses, or some of them I just have to, remember an anecdote. So it's very anecdotal, it's very personal. I'm sure you're reading it here. But what the more interesting thing that I feel more than the Instagram post for me is that I've been able to connect with my collectors, connect with old friends, connect. They become kind of examples of how we go further, how collecting started, that there was absolutely no dream. So I think the market today I cannot tell you, I cannot give you a clear answer whether the market is
Of
ready.
course, of course.
I mean, we're not doing sales. I mean, just to give you some idea, in touch, each of us sold a very, very small amount. We made few sales, but it covered our costs maybe for a month or something. There's enough to keep us going month by month. But the Dhruvi experiment was very interesting because
Yes.
felt people knew where the money was going. So I think that kind of giving to others while making something of for yourself is an experiment that we could even think about. How a part of the share of an art show that does well can go to other more deserving spaces. So I mean,
Sure.
something to think about.
Of course, absolutely. Also, I think one very important takeaway is the fact that many social media interfaces have suddenly emerged as these channels, as these bridges between artists, gallerists, writers, and the world at large. And I, for instance, am completely hooked onto Atul's Instagram feed, and really enjoy, Atul, your lovely images and your series that you keep on doing, photographs, and the way you intersperse them with images and sort of images from your own work, from other people's works, also the places that you have visited. Atul, a lot of your work actually deals with extending the past as a thought, as a bouquet of images, as even a rupture, extending the past into the present, as it were, so as to set off, often playfully, but also often seriously, the way objects and events and people influence each other in strange new ways, in strange new contexts. I'm reminded, and I'm sure there are other instances as well, but I'm reminded at the moment of Cracks in Mondrian. Your body of work, I think, which came out in 2004, 2005. Yes. Where you responded to both the Kutch earthquake and also to the Gujarat riots, if I'm not mistaken. It was also a meditation on abstraction as a genre. It was also a meditation on cartography as a colonial practice, and urban architecture as a producer of a kind of a makeshift Jugadu habitat. You spoke of a new turn. The last time we had a conversation, Atul, you spoke of a new turn in your work now, where you said that you are looking at single figures. Is this like the classic heroic trope of this lone figure against the elements in the wilderness?
Of course, no doubt what we are going through is quite.
I can't.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, little
Louder, a
Yeah,
little louder.
little louder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, now it's better.
Yes.
Yeah, better.
Okay. I was saying that no doubt the time is very quite strange and surreal. Absolutely. It's uh, uh, one feels so helpless, and you don't. And actually, the thing is that the 3 months, 2.5 months, 3 months, whatever is, it's in a way it's nothing. If you
Right.
take in terms of large time
For the
span,
whole world.
yeah, that's the, and at the same time, even a single day could be a kind of too big time. It depends what one is thinking, one is feeling, etc. And we don't know how this is going to go, how long this will last, and what will happen in future. We are not aware of that. This uncertainty, that makes me and all of us a bit um, quite we are disturbed about this thing. But when I knew that now I have to come back and at home and I can't go out to my studio, I decided that the best thing is to, in this kind of a situation, even in sometime in an artist camp or somewhere, the small scale works on paper is the ideal thing. So I had got my pads and, watercolor pad and some paint brush, etc. And I kind of set a small space, where I could do it. So when I started, one thing I knew that now I'm going to do something where I don't have to answer to anyone, not
Right.
even to myself. No critical judgment, what is happening, why it's happening, references, quotation, which is so much part of my oeuvre otherwise, but
Yes.
just to allow. So that, and when I came, I came with the pad which had a half finished watercolor long back, which I was started with of a Saint Francis,
Okay.
that supported, which I had the figure which I had started, and then I left it. So from I started with that, and in 60 days, in last 2 months time, I did 67 paintings.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
Oh my
amazing.
God.
Yeah. And
That's amazing, Atul.
and what I noticed that the paintings are about being a figurative painter. There's obviously there's a human figure. This figure is a solitary figure, and in nature,
Right.
stream,
Right.
river, ocean, forest, banyan trees, small plant, clouds, earth, hills, mountain. Within that, this
Wow.
figure is kind of a moving. So, I was interested in the kind of abstraction which was happening in the process. Because when I start, I don't start with, okay, this figure is going to kind of do such and such act. No, I just do a wiggly line on the paper. And then that round, that stretched line or kind of the drawing, which would suggest as if it's a stretched arm or it's a kind of a pack of women,
Wow. Wow.
something. And from there it gets evolved. And in the end, like in oil painting, you can change dramatically and do a completely new painting also. So that's possible. That medium allows. But in here also, I kind of, when I was not comfortable, not happy, there would be something else would come and I would change the whole subject matter. That has happened.
Wow.
These are all something a new revelation for myself as an artist, which happened. So that, but while doing this, what I was doing, I was listening to Radio Ceylon. 50
Pinaka Geetmala, is it?
yeah, no, I didn't go to Mala, but I went to, because Vinaka was slightly later, but I was listening to late 40s, 50s song. And
Wow.
it's still kind of, Radio Ceylon is amazing because the 10 songs in one film, 5 are popular, but rest of the 5 which no one heard, I mean, or it was not that popular. So they play those. So I have kind of discovered so much as far as the Hindi cinema film music is concerned.
Fantastic, yeah.
That's amazing.
That's one thing. But more than another aspect is this, that memories. So what you do, you are of course involved, painting, listening to some music, etc. But then there are pauses, and there I think of my friend who asked me.
Atul, your audio again.
Yeah, I said that the friends, the artist friends from the Mehta to Padamji to Barve to Betty Gobai, so many other friends. And I mean, those who are no more. The memory comes with all those people, and
Yes.
I mean the time that the as if how long we are going to survive and how long the life will be, and as if these things, my own first solo opening with Shireen at Chemould, as if it was yesterday, but it's been more than 30 years now. So I think, so one thinks about the time and all, but basically, this is how this kind of 2 months has been kind of gone through. But one thing I have to say that, responding to the pandemic, and with the artist, it doesn't happen, not necessarily that one would kind of immediately respond to the actual situation.
Of course.
Like I remember, it took me 5
Atul, your
years.
audio again.
Yeah.
Sorry about this.
Yeah, no problem. Better?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. So, in what happened in 92 in the north, in Ayodhya, it that kind of came, the demolition of Babri Masjid, that response came in 97
Yes.
with the image of Gandhi.
Yes, yes.
And that, of course, that 97 was the 50 years of India's independence, that. And that's how, and from there, the whole an Artist of Non-Violence series came.
Bilkul.
So, I think artists would talk publicly, not necessarily to direct kind of, because I mean, very well you remembered, I had forgotten about the cracks in Mondrian, the earthquake in Kutch, in Gujarat, and all that. And then, I kind of combined with the boundaries and, the partition and fight over the line of control and all these things. So it comes in a very different way. So I think so I was wondering that who is this figure, this solitary figure? See, I'm not going to able to go out. So, the figure with the nature, in nature, in a forest or in a landscape, whatever, that probably is one way of probably, I'm not kind of trying to put any sort of, I put it in kind of, this is what it means, something like that. But a person like, for example, say Gaitonde, how would he do? What he would do? He was an abstract painter, and he would continue. What he, and even then, I personally feel that what I have done is nothing to do directly with the thing, but one could read. One wants to read. The various variety of things about the present time.
Absolutely.
But I think basically I feel that it's a Stuart Davis. He's not that famous here in India, but he was an American artist, contemporary of Edward Hopper in the 30s. And he said a beautiful thing. He said that to paint itself is a social act.
Kya baat. Kya baat.
So I think we are painting that's the, because I'm a painter, that's what I do. But of course, the most disturbing part happened in the evening when I sit in front of the news channel and when I see the migrants I never knew. I know I could see here in Ghatkopar big buildings are coming up, work buildings are happening. Come and they start living, but who is building, and these people, the workers, and their tragic way they have to kind of been pushed outside the city or not been able to kind of allow them to go in the way they should.
Sure.
Able to reach their home, their family. All these things are so disturbing, so my own pain and my own sorrow and my own kind of just not being able to go to studio, etc. So I should talk about that thing,
Right.
It's such a tragedy, which we see, in our country. It's very, very sad. So it's a mix of many things. But I don't know, will erupt. I feel, in my own work or my way of thinking, but I don't know when.
Sure. Atul, I mean, you yourself mentioned some time back, and I have written about it as well, and so have a host of other people, about how quotation is a very important trope in your work. And you seek and find and lose and seek and find your own voice through a host of other voices around you, orchestrating them, gathering echoes, so on and so forth. In this very sort of difficult and melancholy time, you spoke about being visited by many of your friends who are no more. Again, to go back to a question I asked Mrs. Jindal, are there any works or are there any artists or filmmakers that you have been engaging with over the last 3 months specifically?
Well, I've been kind of watching a lot of movies as well, apart from listening to music, but a lot of films I saw, but they are kind of a film which are about the filmmakers which I have been admiring, for a long time. Then there is a filmmaker like Andrei Tarkovsky comes, his film Stalker, or Andrei Rublev, or Ivan, a young boy, in a war.
Incredible.
All this thing, which which talks about the the human tragedy in such a uh, poignant way, with such a and beautifully artistically.
Sure.
So I
Sure.
think these are the kind of things one would think about all these things. But like I also feel about as an artist that see in 1918, exactly 100 years back, Spanish flu, which was erupted in Europe and then
Okay.
America. I don't like you. Of course, Yeats' poem is well known, and it was very apt to start this program with that poem. But other painters, I mean, modern art was in its prime. Cubism,
Yes.
Maoism had happened, Dadaism had just, and Surrealism, which was completely another sort of thing. It's always happening. Picasso, Matisse, Duchamp, Dali. I don't think anyone kind of responded or reacted. Millions of people died actually in that pandemic.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but nothing happened. But then again, you see, the Guernica happened. When Spanish Civil War happened, and the small town of Basque town in
Yes.
in uh, in Spain, Guernica was bombed by the Germans. Picasso painted largest painting, 11 feet by 25. Amazing work.
Right.
So that,
Right.
that
Right.
also happened. So I think um, all these things kind of comes to one's mind, and literature, cinema,
Absolutely.
painting,
Absolutely.
all these
Yeah.
You
things.
know,
I think we have to go to art. Is the only thing where it will take you. To I mean, uh, not to get some solace.
no, no, absolutely.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
I think to kind of have a faith in ourselves.
Yes.
That's important. I think.
Yes. In fact, I'm even as you were speaking, Atul, I was thinking about Ranbir Kaleka's video, Not From Here, which speaks about, which depicts the plight of migrants in various frames.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Pallavi Paul's Lockdown Sounds, Prajakta Potnis's inner visceral landscapes of suffocation, Ranjita Kumari's Beasts of Burden, so on and so forth. So we have various artists over the years who have, in various interesting, modes and manners, responded critically to the transforming situation. Before we sort of wind up, there's one question that I want to throw out to all of you, really. Now that we realize that health is a sector that we have not really invested in as much as we should have. And similarly, we also realize that art and education is not something that we have invested as much as we have in other unimportant fields. Do you feel that the art of tomorrow is the art that will have to be taken to the people at large? Do you feel that art that is more legible, art that speaks to their lives, art that is more public, maybe not national, but public, is the art that will sort of speak to the situation that we are in? I know it's a polemical question, so please feel free to respond to it the way you want to. Mrs. Jindal, can we start from you?
I okay.
Yes.
No, let Atul.
No, no. Okay, please you.
Atul, no, Atul, you start.
I hope that doesn't happen because because you see one is always why I when I paint, first thing what I do, I share, I show it to my family, my friends, and then we feel
Right.
that, okay, it's a worth for a larger audience, so I will exhibit. No doubt we sell and there's a market and there's a whole art world. What That's another thing. But basically it's sharing. So sharing, and it could be, not necessarily that a viewer's understanding, according to viewers' understanding, I produce or I create, or kind of, where they could
Of course.
say, that's, yeah, then it will become totally banal.
Of course. Of course.
So that's not the idea. But I think I always felt, when I exhibit, I often go to galleries. I see, how people see, how people don't see. Their body language in front of a work of art. All this matters to me because you see, it's there is a tremendous amount of joy, basically, of what you have gone through while creating, and the response to other people. So we have a nice word in Gujarati for bhavak. Bhavak is someone who takes the bhav to receive the bhav, the feelings. A viewer.
A little like a Rasika, is it?
Rasik, yeah, Rasik actually. Rasik is also one word, yeah, absolutely. But so I think the relationship of artist and audience, what it should be in a normal way, it should remain that. And that's the perfect way. I mean, if there's nothing that the back pass for something.
Sure. Sure.
Shireen.
Shireen.
I feel like, I mean, if you take the example of a Kochi Biennale and the kind of response that a very normal public will have on a very normal day, not opening days, I think that we underestimate what people get out of art. I really don't think that, I don't remember the artist's name, but the first Biennale had the most fabulous work of a ship that was going from China to Europe.
Oh, yeah.
And pillar was being built. You know, it was such a slow moving video, it was so hot in there. Every time I go there, I'm like, oh, the same scene. But somebody then told me, no, do not miss that video. So I went back when I'd gone back and, I saw that video. It was packed. I mean, people didn't leave and they were all, everybody was there. I mean, that's my real image of the Kochi Biennale where I don't think we need to think that only the certain elite expect. Anyway, the kind of art I show is extremely, the kind of artists I have is very, very open, well understood. I generally think I don't have an obtuse kind of program, Atul or Jitesh or Reena. It's a very, you just scratch the surface and it's there to be seen. So I don't think that we need to kind of like, we need to draw about the pandemic for it to be understood. I mean, I know you're asking that, but yeah, I mean, I think our audiences are equally receptive. So that's my response as a gallerist.
Sure. Mrs. Jindal?
So my view is that there are many, many types of Indias. We all live in the metropolitan cities and we somehow understand art. But if you look at the majority of Indians, there's Art India only in English. It would have been, if we are saying that if we want art for the public, we have to change. It should be for all the other vernacular languages. People can see the work of other artists, but they do not have any conversations with the artists. And I feel that this online digital that is happening is just the beginning. Even in India, majority of Indians have the mobile smartphones. If we can have an education which is in their language, then art will become much more widespread. According to me, it is very, very minuscule.
Right.
Kochi Biennale is only for very, very few people who are in that region. There are people like Mumbai, Delhi, all these people who are art lovers, they go to Kochi Biennale. The people from Kochi go to see Kochi Biennale. But there are not many explanations to many people.
Right.
So I think we have lots to do. I mean, this is just the beginning.
No, absolutely. Sort of drawing from what the three of you have been discussing, I think one important area of focus that we have all arrived at is to reconsider all what art does, or all what art can actually do and achieve. Ask difficult questions of the powers that are, document a transforming world creatively, reimagine the future, and processually maybe heal, as many people, as many parts of our consciousness as we can. James Baldwin, this Black American poet calls poets emotional historians. All of us really stand on the cusp of a transforming world, a transforming art world, really, where all the players, all the actors ought to and will, I feel, reach out uh, for each other, promote facilities, and experiment ceaselessly. I think that's very important, because finally, how do we react in a new way? It's only by experimenting ceaselessly. And develop all kinds of provocations that will help us all to make sense of a world we all have to gather together around us. A world that is so scattered at the moment, a world that is replete with all kinds of panic stations, both within us and without us. I think that is what I expect all of us to finally, come down to doing. Thanks, Atul. Thanks, Mrs. Jindal. Thanks, Shireen, for being part of this wonderful session. And thank you, all our listeners. Please get back to us with your responses and your criticism. We take it very seriously. And we promise you that we'll bring more such series. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.